Okay, hi all, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. You can probably see my screen now too.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So I will start today's discussion hour. First of all, very warm welcome in the quantum computing course. I'm pretty happy that you have chosen to be here. You might guess from today that we are going to start on time. So the class will start at 4 o'clock. So make sure that you are here by 4 o'clock. Otherwise, you might miss something. Do most of you must be on Hello, right? Are you able to access Hello platform?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
great. Right. So, two important things. The Hello platform, that is where I will put information, and then the course webpage. It should not be hard for you to find the course webpage. Go to my page and just look at CS682 link. Okay, all of you are good at doing Googling things. So you can Google my name and then go to CS682. That will be the course web page. I will try to make sure that the information is available at as many places as possible, but for you, it will be a good idea to check both Hello platform as well as the course web page. Okay. To start with, I'm thinking of online video lectures, and then we will have a discussion hour every week. If you want to switch from it, I will probably take a poll and decide if you want to make it synchronous or something. I don't know. At this point, are there people who will have trouble attending synchronous classes for this course? Or everyone can attend synchronous classes? Let me see. Let me probably start a poll or something. I don't know how to do that. Okay. Yeah, and you might want to mute your mic. Right. So do you see a poll now? No, yes.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. Okay.
Sir, my net had gone for some 1 minute. So, what is the poll on?
Okay. So now probably you
I
can
can
see the
see.
question. Yes.
Yes, sir.
I can see. Yeah, it's available now.
Okay, sir, can you once explain what is synchronous classes?
That means the regular timing of the class, Tuesdays and Fridays, 3 to 5, I will have a Zoom call and I will take a regular class where I will explain everything, but then I will not upload online video lectures.
No, in that case also you can upload the recorded discussion.
I will upload the recorded thing, but it will be 1.5 hours long and it will have multiple gaps. It will not be as concise and as nice as the online video lectures. That's the trade-off. But then you can interact in the class, you can ask questions in the class, which is easier, I guess. So
You have said that if we can, I mean, if we can, but we are more comfortable in asynchronous mode, then what shall we do? Like?
Then you can click on no.
Okay.
This is probably to find out your preference.
Sir, so will you upload the same video that will you upload the same lecture that synchronous lecture on MOOC?
Right. Like it will be around 1 hour 15 minutes. that lecture I will upload. Assuming there are no space constraints and things like that.
Your mail said that this class will be from 4 to 5. So how can the lecture be 1 hour 20?
No. See, this is a discussion hour, right? So there are two modes. One is the synchronous mode. If we go towards the synchronous mode, then we will have two lectures of 1 hour 15 minutes each every week. There will not be any online video lectures. That's one mode. The second mode is the asynchronous mode, which was for this week, where I have a discussion hour, 1 hour, where I will summarize the things, not go into detail, but then I will upload video lectures. Like this one, right? Like if you had gone to Hello, you would have seen already videos and a weekly assignment and things like that, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So that is the difference between the two modes. Synchronous means when I take the class, you will also be there. That's how it is synchronous.
So this week 1 assignment, is it
We will put
graded
the
one
assignment
or?
later. Don't worry. Yes, it is graded one. We will go to it in some time. Don't worry. Okay, so I think not many people are replying now. Okay, so I get a sense of what the preferences are. So 59% said they can, 41% they said they can't or they wouldn't prefer it. Okay, is there anyone who will have trouble attending the synchronous class in terms of bandwidth and things like that? You can just speak now.
Yes, sir. Sometimes the net is not very good at my place.
Okay, I see. Anyone else? Okay, so let's start with this, since there are enough people who have apprehensions about synchronous thing. So let's start with this video thing, and later we can have another poll and we can switch to it if required. Okay.
I think,
So
sir, maybe people who have some trouble in attending synchronous class, but there may not be a single person who will have problem in asynchronous mode.
yeah, so that is what I'm saying. So at this point, since there are problems, then we will go with asynchronous mode like this. So we will have a discussion hour every week, but then the content of the course, the video lectures will be uploaded on, and that you can watch whenever it is good for you, whenever with flexibility. Okay. So yeah, and after 3 weeks, we can again take stock of the situation and see if this is going fine. Okay. Okay. So let's start. Today is just basically an introduction, and hopefully it will finish soon, and then you can enjoy your time at home. So let's start. This course is going to be about quantum computing. If you have any questions, raise your hand in the. Can you raise your hand in Zoom? Probably you can.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So
we
raise.
can.
Yeah, just type on the chat box. So what are the timings for synchronous classes? Time for synchronous classes would be the same ones, right? Tuesday, Friday, 3:30 to 4:50. Okay. And this Jayant, the thing about asynchronous, synchronous, we will probably take a poll in a few weeks. Let's start with asynchronous at this point. Okay. So how many people have, okay, this will be another poll. So, but I hope that some of you have watched the videos. Has anyone watched the videos?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Okay, that's good to know. So you already know this course is about quantum computing, and what quantum computing is, we want to do computation using the principles of quantum mechanics, right? It seems that if we can encode computation in the principles of quantum mechanics, then we can compute faster. That's the feeling, and there is good enough evidence for that. And I think after finishing this course, you will be convinced that yes, if we can encode computation through the laws of quantum mechanics, we can do something faster. And there are problems for which can be encoded in the principles of quantum mechanics. That we will see in the course. A very important note here that this is going to be a computer science and mathematics perspective of that. This is definitely an interdisciplinary branch. There are people from physics, people from mathematics, electrical, computer science, chemistry working in this department, in this field. I am only able to talk about the perspective of a computer scientist. So that's what we will look at. That means it will be heavily biased towards quantum algorithms. We will see what kind of algorithms we can create on a quantum computer. That's the main objective of this course. Okay. This will be very, very heavily dependent on mathematics. If you don't want to get into mathematics, if you are a person who would like to build a quantum computer, then this is not a course for you. If you want to learn about quantum computing and how you can solve problems on a quantum computer faster, then this is the course. And then there's going to be a lot of mathematics involved, specifically lot of linear algebra. You will see by the end of the course, you would know a lot more linear algebra than what you studied in your MTH 102 or whatever in your first year. Okay, so, and I will not stop using mathematics because it's deep mathematics or something. We will go through the proofs. We will make sure that we know what we are talking about. Okay, so it is going to be pretty math heavy. And if you are taking this course, then I will assume that you understand that mathematics and you understand that language and you can answer that. Okay, a bit of theory of computing knowledge is good. If you are already from computer science, that's great. You might have taken a course already. Otherwise, you will have to pick some theory of computing as we proceed in the course. Is there a question? Okay. There is no project track. So there was a question, is there a project track? There is no project track. So, right. So the assignments will be, there will be a lot of mathematics in the assignments and you are supposed to answer that. Okay. Quizzes and all those, you will be asked to prove things and so on. I already told you, course webpage is the best place to look for information. And then for your questions and everything, we have Hello platform. I will be putting announcements on the Hello platform too. Make sure that you utilize it fully. If you have any questions, post it on the forum and I will try to answer them as quickly as possible. We have already decided that the discussion hour is going to be from 4 to 5 on Friday. We will start at 4 and hopefully we will finish by 4:50. Today was the first discussion hour. So I'm just going to provide a summary of first week's lecture. From next week, I will start a thread on Hello. Okay, so you can see my screen. You can see where I'm writing. No?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, so from next week, yeah, so there will be a thread on Hello, a forum post, and I will ask if there is a particular topic which is not clear on in the video. Okay, so when you watch the videos, you look at that. I'm going to upload the videos on Monday, let's say. I expect that by Friday you would have seen the videos, and by actually Thursday you would have watched the videos and you will let me know what topics were not clear. So those topics I will cover in the discussion. That is the idea of the discussion. If there are quizzes, surprise quizzes or something, that will also happen in the discussion. That's why we will have discussion hours. No specific textbook. I do not follow any textbook chapter by chapter. Generally, the best book is Nielsen and Chuang. If you want a comprehensive book on quantum computation, that's the book I recommend. You can probably find an online copy from somewhere. And if you have any questions, if you feel that the notes are not enough, this is the place you can get more information about. There might be topics which are not covered in this book. I will give the reference when I cover those topics. You are always welcome to ask for more references on the forum, and I will reply if I know of anything else, any other place where you can read about this topic. In terms of content, I already told you that there are video lectures and there will be course notes on the web page. Just looking at the videos will not be enough. I would assume that the total content for the course is the course notes as well as video lectures. So you watch the video lectures and you go through the course notes. Both are required to understand the course. Quantum computing is a slightly okay, for the lack of better term, weird topic in the sense that you haven't understood the basics, you don't know the quantum language. So we have to do some extra work. That means you just not watch the video lectures, but you will go to the course notes also. Then only you will be able to answer assignments and quizzes and etc. Okay. Grading, this might be something which you are very interested in, and probably I am not. I think there is a question. Yeah, so someone has asked how much of a problem would we face if we have not taken a course of theory of computation before. It is, you can easily pick up the amount of TOC you will need in this course. So I would say that probably you will spend like around, in total in the course, around 5-6 more hours reading some book on theory of computation. You will have to read a bit about Turing machine, sometimes probably circuits. You might have seen it in some other course, but definitely you can pick it up. It's not a must. Linear algebra is a must. You should have taken a course in linear algebra. TOC, even if you haven't taken a course, you can pick it up. That's my understanding. Could you send some resource for picking up TOC? Ask your computer science friends. There are a lot of good books on theory of computation. Pick a book. Whenever I cover a topic, just look at the topic in that book. Okay, there are a lot of good books. I think.
So, can we have anything for the linear algebra? Any refresher files?
So I will cover few basics in the preliminary lectures, but Strang is a good book. Gilbert Strang, something I don't know, linear algebra and its applications or something is the name. G Strang.
Strang is enough.
That is what you will start with, and then there is some topic which is not clear, then I will tell you. But let's say for the first 4-5 weeks, Strang should be good. Okay. So yeah. So for grading, I will be giving weekly assignments. So probably, so there are 14 weeks. I will miss out on 2 weeks, but there will be 12 weekly assignments. So I will post them, and you will have to submit them by Monday. So there is one assignment due this Monday. Okay. That's one point of evaluation. There are going to be 2 major quizzes that will be, I think, 1 hour 30 minutes kind of quizzes. One will be held this Tuesday, coming Tuesday. Okay, and this will check your knowledge of linear algebra. So I would have uploaded 2 weeks of lectures. 1 week has already been uploaded. Second week I will upload by tomorrow. So the questions will be based on that and some small linear algebra kind of thing. So that quiz I will take on Tuesday, this Tuesday, coming Tuesday. What date is that? Today is 15th, so
19.
Yeah, 19th.
So still the ad drop period is going on. So I mean, and it will also take some time for us to go through linear algebra, that book.
Right, right. But I'm assuming that you already know it, right?
Okay.
That's why.
If you want to learn it now, like if you want to recall the things now,
Yeah, so that should not take much time. If you go through the lecture, video notes, video lectures and course notes, that should be good.
And not the video lectures, sir, the linear algebra stuff.
So most of that linear algebra is covered in the course notes and video.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay. The kind of things you will have to probably see some, and if you don't remember that, then you probably want to go and. So yes, so I've already told you the quiz will be on linear algebra basics, which I have covered in first 2 weeks of video lectures.
Sir, what will be the format of the quiz?
What do you mean by that?
Sir, I mean that multiple choice or
No, it will not be multiple choice. It will be a subjective quiz. So you will be proving some stuff.
Okay, sir.
Okay. And
So would we be using LaTeX for that?
no,
To write the proofs?
No. You can just write it on a pen and paper and upload a photo. That's
Okay,
it.
okay.
Okay. And there will be 2 minor quizzes. Those will be smaller. I will probably keep them in discussion hour or something. So that would be 20 minutes or something, 20 or 30 minutes. And I don't know, probably one of them could be surprise. I will decide. I haven't decided. Okay. And then there is midsem and endsem. So my understanding is that if you are regular in classes, that means you watch the videos regularly, you look at the course notes regularly, then things won't be difficult for you. If you decide to study for the quizzes themselves, for the assignments themselves, that is going to be a tough task. But I will try to make assignments and quizzes so that if you are following the stuff regularly, it will require some work. As I told you, quantum computing is new to all of us. So it will require some work, but if you are putting in that work regularly, then it is. The Tuesday
19 Jan, the
quiz will be 1 hour 20 minutes or something, 1 hour 15 minutes. Let's see. Exact time I don't know, but close to 1 hour, one lecture.
okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
The 4 p.m. only or
3:30. 3:30.
Okay, 3:30 to 4:45 allotted.
Yes. Yes, something like that. Okay. So then, at this point, there are 2 things. By Monday night, you have to submit a summary of the first week of lectures. That means whatever has been published till now. There are 2 lectures. You have to just write like 1 or 2 paragraphs about what you learned from these lectures. You don't want to write technical details. You don't want to give me the photo of your course notes which you made while watching the lectures. It needs to be a summary where you tell overall viewpoint of what you understood by watching that. Okay? Please don't submit whatever notes you make while you are watching the videos. So Spandan, won't it be good if the exams and quizzes are proctored? Yes. So how I will do it, I will decide later. But yeah, Tuesday's quiz will be on Zoom. You will be keeping your video on, and then we will keep the quiz. That modalities of how the quiz will be taken, I will take you on Tuesday.
So will it be closed notes?
Will it be closed notes? I don't care. You can keep notes if you want. I don't think that will help, but yeah. Okay. So right, and another thing which I want to emphasize, as I said, you can obviously tell me what your expectations from this course are. I will try my best to teach you this nice scientific development where we think that we can compute faster using quantum mechanical principles. What are the ideas? and so on. But my expectation from you would be that you put in certain amount of effort every week. And second, most importantly, do not engage in any immoral activity. I will not tolerate any kind of cheating, any kind of behavior like that. For people who have taken course from me before, they know this. The summary, you can just type it in the chat box. The question is weekly summary assignment. Should it be handwritten or typed? You can just type it in the box in hello, or you can take a photo of the page on which you will write the question paper. Ali's question is it possible to get into quantum computing research after taking this course? That is the idea, that after going through this course, again, quantum computing has many, many different directions. I think you will be familiar with quantum algorithms. If you want to go into quantum complexity theory, quantum algorithms, in a nutshell, what a computer scientist does in quantum computing, that you should be able to pursue. That's the idea of this course. Right.
Can you give an overview of what are the topics in quantum information and quantum cryptography, or just a little overview?
I will not won't be covering them, right?
Yes, just what are the what is the thing like actually, and just I need to know that.
No. Are you saying that one lecture I should devote to talk about quantum cryptography and quantum information?
No, just a little overview, like 5 minutes or so. Can you give?
That we can do informally or something. I will see. So I will
Okay.
keep like a discussion session or something and keep that.
So would there be talk on decision tree complexity and query complexity?
I will talk about query complexity.
Mhm.
And that will involve decision tree complexity also. The summary you have to write, that is the week 0 summary. Whatever I have uploaded till now. Nothing else. Okay, so I will take the questions after I make this point, which is that you have to make sure that you don't cheat. If you cheat, that is at your risk. If I find you, I will not be lenient. Last semester, I think decreased the grade 2 grades for at least around 15 to 20 people. And that after giving them 0 in the assignment or something. So make sure that you do not cheat. If you are thinking that you can, some quizzes, you can exchange information, things like that, probably this course is not for you. I don't want to go into the hassle of arguing with you. I will not. If I think and TAs think that you have cheated, I will give you the punishment. So better not to engage into such things. Okay. So now is a good time. We will stop before I give a summary of this week's lectures. If you have any questions, I see one question on chat.
Sir, what are the things that will be considered? Cheating in like assignments and exams.
So assignments you can discuss, but you cannot copy. That means if you take the assignment from someone, change it marginally and upload it, that's cheating. You write it, you discuss it with someone else, then you write it on your own, that's fine. In quizzes, end sem, mid sem, you will not have any contact with any other person. And I think you should not go on the internet. That would be my expectation.
So this no drop after 19 point is for the guys who got cheated.
Yes. So if you are caught cheating, then I will not allow you to drop the course after. And I will decrease your grade or probably fail. So that is something which should clearly be worried about, I would say. So decide yourself. If you want to invest that much time in the course, then take it. Otherwise, you should not take this course. Okay. There is another question. Other people have also asked me, is there a particular reason we are not having projects this time? I would love to give projects, but at this point, the class strength is 140 people. With that, for me, it is not possible to give meaningful projects. If later, at some point, if I find a technique, or if there are less number of people, then I will convert end sem weightage or mid sem weightage to projects. Any other question people have?
So, will the weekly assignments be always submit a summary of the lectures?
No.
What's that?
No.
Okay. Sir. And can we have some practice assignments kind of thing?
There will be questions in the course notes.
Okay. Sir.
And then whatever reference you are reading, that would be there. And this is an elective course, right? Now you are at a stage where you can't expect practice questions and the same questions coming in assignments or quizzes. When I give you quizzes in the course notes, I give questions so that your understanding is better. And once your understanding is good, then whatever questions I frame, you should be able to answer. That's the idea.
So
handwritten assignments will be accepted. If possible, if you can type it, that's better. Sorry, question ahead.
Will the grading be relative or absolute, sir?
I haven't decided yet. But yeah, what I can assure you is that if you regularly work, your weekly assignments you submit, quizzes you get like good enough, like 60-70% marks or something, then you should be in a good shape. You should get A. But for that, you will have to score in every evaluation criteria, not like just end sem you score very well, that's, or in end sem, mid sem. That's not going to work. Any other questions? Okay, let's see.
This week summary will be graded, weekly summary.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Everything will be graded. Will you provide EPD of recommended books? No, I don't have that capacity. I can't. When will you be uploading material for the linear algebra quiz on Tuesday? That material will be exhaustive in the sense that those are the topics which will be asked. It will not be exhaustive in the sense that there are theorems which are listed there. I will expect that you know the proof of them, but the proof is not given in the lecture notes. In terms of when will I be uploading material, week 0 lecture notes are already uploaded. Week 1 I will upload. By tomorrow you will have all the material required for the linear algebra quiz. Okay, so let's go ahead and okay, I see one more question. So are the summaries part of the weekly assignment? Sometimes they will be. So there will be a weekly assignment. Yes, yes, in the sense of whenever I make a weekly assignment and say that write a summary, it will be part of it. So this week's weekly assignment is that you have to write a summary. Next week's weekly assignment could be different. Sir, should we expect proof questions also in exams? Definitely, yes. I think most of my questions in the exam would be proof based. You have to prove some property or you have to construct some circuit and things like that. It will be, the course is going to be mathematical. That I can assure you. Okay. So let's let's look at a small summary. I don't have much time, so let's look at a small summary of what we saw this week in the video lectures, right? So the first question, I guess, if you say that, oh, I'm going to do a course on quantum computing, if you say that you want to do a course on quantum computing, first question that will come to your mind is, what is quantum computing, right? Informally, it is computation which is done on a quantum mechanical device. What is a quantum mechanical device? A device which follows quantum mechanical properties, right? So if you see at the bottom of the screen, I have written an informal definition. We will explain these words as we go along. What is quantum computing? You want to do computation using a box, which I am calling quantum mechanical box. What is a quantum mechanical box? It's a box which follows quantum mechanical property. And you might have a question that everything follows quantum mechanics. So every box is quantum mechanical. That is true. But what I mean is that there are these properties of quantum mechanics which are different from classical mechanics. So I would call something a quantum mechanical device if it is using some extra properties of quantum mechanics, not like a regular classical device. Okay. And what are these properties? How do we use them? That's the content of this course. Right? And when I say computation using quantum mechanical device, a simple question would be, what is computation? And computation is automated calculation. Right? So you want to do some calculation, you want to figure out some problem, but you want some other mechanical thing to do it. You want some computer to do it. You want some calculator to do it. You don't want to do it yourself. And if you look at any kind of computer, it's how computer works is that you encode your computation using the principles of the world around you, right? So the device follows some principles and you want to encode your computation using those rules. This seems very weird, but it becomes very clear with the examples. If you look at the classical computer you are using to listen to this talk, that computer works on the principles of electricity, right? So you have laws about how the current behaves, how the voltage behaves, and then using those rules, you can design and or NOT gates and things like that. And once you have those gates, you can build up on these gates to make more complicated circuits. You can build up more complicated algorithms and things like that. So the classical computer uses principles of principles like Ohm's law, Kirchhoff's law, and things like that. I have given an example in the course notes about an insect. So this is some kind of an insect which satisfies some problem. How can you encode computation there? That you will see in the lecture. So that will give you an idea about how to use computation. Sorry, how to use some principles to do computation. And in 1980s, Feynman's idea was that even quantum mechanics has a lot of wonderful properties. You know, you have particles going around, they collide, and then a new particle comes out, their velocity changes. Is it possible to encode my computation in these quantum mechanical properties? And if I can do that, I can probably compute new things. I can probably compute things faster than my classical. And that gave birth to quantum computing. I think all of you understand the meaning of simulation. One of the problems for Feynman was to simulate quantum particles. Suppose you have electrons, suppose you have photons, you have protons, which are very, very small. So their properties are very different from classical mechanics. Now, if you make them interact with each other, you keep them in a box for a while, how will their state change? What what will they look like in future? So one way is to simulate them on a classical computer, but that was very, very expensive. So Feynman's idea was, why don't I just make electrons in that state, keep them for some time, and then observe their properties? So a quantum computer, a computer where I interact with quantum mechanical particles, quantum mechanical device, should be a better place to simulate quantum mechanics as compared to a classical. Again, this is a very, very kind of rough overview, and I'm hiding a lot of things under the rug, but that's the idea. And when I say that again, you might have a question. I answered it already. Isn't every computation quantum computation? If you take the literal definition, yes, but we are all adults. So we will agree on the fact that we will call something quantum computation if the properties it uses are markedly different from classical. Okay, so it is called quantum computation if, in some sense, there is no classical mechanical quantum part. Okay, so we are using properties of quantum mechanics which are not there for classical. These are, if you have taken a course in quantum mechanics, you might have heard of these properties: superposition, entanglement, and so on. These are the properties which are inherently quantum mechanical. They are not present in classical mechanics. And we want to use those properties to do computation. How we do it, that is something which you will learn in this course. Great. Feynman said we can do quantum computation. Now you know that probably you can do quantum computation, but a more practical person will ask, why quantum computation? Why would you want to do quantum computation? Yes, you can do something, doesn't mean you should go ahead and do it. You can probably jump in a well, doesn't mean that you should go and jump in the well, right? So why? Why should we invest so much energy, so many people, so much money to make a quantum? So I will need a bit of theory of computing basics here. There is something called weak Church-Turing hypothesis, which says that whatever you can do by any computer, you can do it by a Turing machine. I guess people are familiar with it. Are some people familiar with weak Church-Turing hypothesis?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So Church-Turing hypothesis is basically saying that whatever you can compute on a classical computer. So our first hope could be that, oh, we might do something on a quantum computer which is not possible to do on a Turing machine. That is not true. So remember, we can't break weak Church-Turing hypothesis. Okay. That is something which we know. That is because whatever happens on a quantum computer, we can simulate it on a classical computer, though very, very slowly. Okay, that simulation could be very, very time consuming. So that.
So is the proof of this there in the lecture?
The classical, can we do we simulate?
Yeah.
We can simulate.
Yeah.
Yes, actually that proof is not very, very difficult. Yes, I will probably, when I come to that, I will point out that this property is enough to say that whatever you do on quantum can be simulated on a classical.
So there was a recent breakthrough in quantum complexity theory that QIP star is equals to RE, means recursively enumerable language can be described in terms of two prover, one verifier model. So doesn't that break these things?
So interactive proofs is not your Turing machine model, right?
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So that is not comparable with Turing machine model. So it is saying that in the interactive proof system, your quantum interactive proofs could be way stronger than your classical interactive proofs. Okay, but it is not commenting anything about Turing hypothesis, and I think this is going too much into detail of theory of computation, which most people are not familiar with. So we can discuss it one-on-one.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, so weak Church-Turing hypothesis we definitely can't break. Strong Church-Turing hypothesis says that whatever computation I can do in any machine, I can do it efficiently on a Turing machine. Now, efficient, you might know polynomial time and things like that. So otherwise, for people who have not heard of these concepts, just think that the loss will not be great. Whatever you can do on any computation, you can do it in a decent amount of time on Turing machines. So that we don't know. Though I would say that there is not enough evidence that quantum computing can break strong Church-Turing hypothesis. We don't know. We don't. I'm not saying that I believe that. That might not be true. Though there are a lot of problems where QC seems much faster than classical computer. So I will call CC the classical computer. So QC for a lot of problems, and that's the scope of this course. That is what we will see. We will see many instances, many resources, models where quantum computer will take much less resources as compared to a classical. Again,
so would you mind increasing your volume?
Am I clear now? Is my voice clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the question was that if it can't break strong Church-Turing hypothesis, one thing is we don't know that yet. Second thing is that we might not be able to break the polynomial barrier, but still there are problems for which we can definitely do faster. For example, a search problem, which is, if you have taken the ASC 101 course, search, everyone has to do search. It is a subroutine which is required in almost every problem. And it turns out that there is a square root advantage in doing search on a quantum computer. When I say square root advantage means if you have n entries, you can search among them only in square root n time. That sounds fabulous and surprising, and we will see the proof of it. So if you want to search among n entries, there is no order. So you can't do binary search kind of a thing. There is no order. You have n things. On a classical computer, you have to look at n entries. Quantumly, in some sense, you only have to look at square root n entries, right? So that's a big, big advantage. And think of it for such a practical problem like search. That gives you a lot of advantages in many different situations.
So I have a question. So this speeding up thing means quantum computers are more fast than classical computer. That comes because quantum computation can capture non-determinism power of.
No. So you are saying quantum computers are faster than classical computers because they can capture non-determinism?
Yes.
No. If that was true, then we would know that the class NP can be solved by polynomial time quantum computers. But definitely, I don't think we have any evidence. That's not true. So some people will say parallelism, but I don't think that's the idea. I think it's just that quantum principles are strong enough to encode computations which you can't do classically. And you will see many examples of that. I wouldn't give it a name of non-determinism or parallel computing. I think that's just to simplify things, and that those are probably wrong.
Sir, are there problems for which classical computer is better than a quantum computer?
Yeah, good question. Before that, just Ali asked a question. Is that square root advantage possible to achieve in reality? So the thing is that in terms of building a quantum computer, we are trying to build things, and if we can build a large enough quantum computer, then we can see this square root n advantage. There is no good reason that we should not be seeing this square root n advantage. You might want to read about quantum supremacy to look at some problems which definitely are much faster on a quantum computer, and there have been recent papers and recent experiments which show that quantum supremacy is possible, in the sense that they solve some problem on a quantum computer in a very, very small time, which will take like hundreds of years or millions of thousands of years on a classical. That's what is called in some sense quantum supremacy, to show a practical problem which can be done faster. So that there are evidences that practically also we can achieve quantum supremacy. That has not been done for search yet. For that we need big enough systems. We have not been able to build that bigger systems. Sorry, what was the question before this thing? Someone asked and I.
Sir, can I is there a problem for which classical computer performs better than a quantum computer?
Right. So that is actually a more interesting question than saying that whatever we can do quantumly, can we simulate it classically? That we can do. The reverse is also true, that whatever we can do classically, we can simulate classically. Not just that, we can simulate it very, very efficiently. And we will see an outline of the proof of this fact in the course. Okay. So we will, and it's not that difficult. You will basically see that whatever basic gates we have in classical computing, universal gate set, we can kind of mimic them with the same cost in a quantum computer. And then, you know, you can just compose them. Sir, this simulation of quantum computer and classical machines still uses classical. Yeah, that is true. It uses classical things, but then, okay, so if you have watched the videos, you haven't watched the first week videos, but the states of k qubits is a vector of dimension to the power k. So you can simulate, you can keep those entries. But again, let's talk about it when we come to that. So it will take exponentially more entries than classical computer, but you can do it. Okay. So what will we cover? We will start. So first week is just this introduction, and then we will go through the basics and postulates. Then what are the postulates of quantum mechanics? That is what we will learn. Whatever we need for them, that will also be covered. That will be a lot of linear algebra. Then we will talk about model of quantum computation. That means if you want to write an algorithm on a quantum computer, how will you present to everyone? What is the standard accepted model? Like, let's say Turing machine model. What is the standard accepted model for quantum computation? Quantum circuits, what do they mean? How do you draw them? All that things we will do in the second part. And once you know this model, once you know postulate of quantum mechanics, you will be ready to look at algorithms on a quantum computer. So these are the three main parts. You can look at first course handout to see these things. If you are interested, you can go to the previous offerings, look at the course notes, and you will have a very good idea of what we will cover. What we will not cover, definitely, I'm not a physicist. So if you ask me questions like, why haven't we built quantum computer yet? How can we build it? Very interesting questions, frankly, but I don't have much idea. So I will not be answering this. Okay. So quantum information, quantum cryptography, quantum hardware in the sense of building a quantum computer. Those are the things we will not be covering in this course. They are very, very interesting topics. I encourage you to go read about them. There are people in our institute who work on them, talk to them, and get to know more. Okay. Many people have this question, can we build a quantum computer? I don't see any practical limitation. The problems are scalability and stability. That means to make sure that stability problem is that you have, these small particles you want to take control of. Can you keep them in their desired state for a long time? You don't ask these questions for a classical computer because, the systems are very, very stable. You want to keep something in, let's say, as a bit 1. They will stay in bit 1 for a long, long time. The errors are very less, and then you have these error correcting protocols. But in a quantum computer, this becomes a big issue. You're talking about these fast-moving small systems where the state changes so quickly, you are not even able to do your computation in the time where their state is stable. So keeping your quantum computer stable for a decent enough time, that's a challenge. And scalability, that means having lot of quantum bits at your disposal. In classical thing, you know, you have 2 bits, you have 32 bits, then you make a system of 64 bits, and it's not that difficult to increase the number of bits. You just start making bigger and bigger processors and things like that. It doesn't work like that in quantum computers. There is a property of entanglement, which some of you might already know, and that makes it very, very hard to increase the number of quantum bits on which you can perform the computation. So these 2 big problems are an issue. And I am not an expert. If you wish, you can read about it more on Google. You can talk to people in physics department who work on these things, and you would see that what are the problems, and there's definitely a lot of progress in terms of the size of the system, stability of the system. We have been able to increase them a lot as compared to what they were 20, 30 years back. Okay, the last part which I want to cover is it's a small experiment which actually mentions that how is quantum mechanics different from, let's say, probability. Some people will say, oh, you can do things in parallel. Oh, it's just a probability model or something. So this is an experiment which actually tells you that simple probability interpretation of quantum mechanical formula is not. There is something else which is good. Many of you in computer science might have seen randomized computation, where you can flip coins in between and do computation like that. That is not same as quantum computer. That's what I wanted to emphasize. So I have 4 minutes. I will just go through this experiment and then finish the discussion hour today. More details of this are in the course notes, video note lectures, and then on Wikipedia articles. Okay, so this is the in-between thing which you see here, a strip. This is something which splits your beam into 2 parts. So what it means, you have photon gun, that means it's releasing photons. Sometimes this beam splitter, this is called a beam splitter. Sometimes the beam splitter lets the photon go in one direction, so it is detected by detector 1. Sometimes it reflects it, and then it is detected by detector 2. So a probabilistic interpretation of this would be that, oh, this beam splitter, half the times it reflects it, half the times it reflects it. Till now, there is nothing which we cannot explain by probability means. Let's do a slightly more complicated experiment, and you will see that this interpretation is not good. You will now see here that in this next experiment, there are 2 beam splitters and 2 mirrors. Okay, so these are mirrors which will always reflect. You can see by their action. The beam splitters, you remember, they can reflect or refract. Remember, if the interpretation was that beam splitter half the times it reflects and half the time it refracts, when the photon goes in this direction, it can take the top route or it can take the bottom route with half probabilities. And then even at the second beam splitter, there is half the probability to get reflected, half the probability to get refracted. That means if you want to calculate the probability that I get a photon at detector 2, it can take the top route and then get reflected. That is 25%. Or it can take the bottom route. I have written bottom here, take the bottom route and then get refracted at the beam splitter. That's 25%. Detector 1, I can take the top route and then refract. That's 25%, half multiplied by half. Otherwise, I can take the bottom route and then I can get reflected. That's again 25%. So in total, if the probability interpretation was correct, I should see 50% of the photons at detector 1 and 50% of the photons at detector 2. What happens if you do the experiment? You will never see a photon at detector 2. This means the probability interpretation is not correct. There has to be something additional to it. We will make postulates about quantum mechanics, and we will see that if we write the state in terms of complex amplitudes and everything, then this experiment begins to make sense. Sorry, I'm not able to go into detail of this one, but the point I'm trying to emphasize is that quantum computation is not simply probabilistic computation. Okay, and this I will probably reconvince you again and again when we go through different algorithms and different postulates of quantum mechanics. So we will now have interaction on Hello platform. You can ask your questions on Hello forum, and then we will meet on Tuesday for the quiz. Okay, let me see if there are more questions here. I can answer them. Can we use bullet point to summarize, or we need to strictly follow the paragraph method? No. There is. It's not strict like that. You can always feel free. What I'm saying is the length of your answer. That's why I said 2 paragraphs. Yeah. So if you don't know what is probabilistic computation, then search for randomized algorithms. That would be the best thing for you. I think it's not possible for me to answer it now. Simply put, in this computer, you have the ability to toss coins. At some point, if head comes, then I will go into one computation path. If tail comes, then I will go into a different computation path. And then my output conditions are different. But that gives you power to do different kind of computations. So this, you can think of this as a square, the rectangle or something, but you can read about it more in the Mach-Zehnder interferometer Wikipedia. So the question was, in this interferometer, do we want these lengths to be equal? So yeah, you assume these lengths to be equal, and then if you see actually the beam splitters, the reflecting edges are different. In one, it is at the top. The bottom one, the reflecting edge is at the bottom. The other one, it is at the, the bottom one, the reflecting edge is at the top. In the top beam splitter, the reflecting edge is at the bottom. So all these are small things which you have to take care of so that there is a phase difference. But yeah, you can read about that in Wikipedia. Are there any more questions?
So, will you stay in your office at any point of time so that we can have a phone kind of interaction?
No.
Regarding doubts?
No. If you want to ask questions, ask them on Hello Forum.
Okay.
Please don't call me in my office for your questions. You can email me if the forum questions are not getting answered. But if you want to ask questions, forum is the best way. Otherwise, if you are in the campus, you can come to the office and then ask questions. But on phone, I will not be able to answer questions. There are 140 students. I don't have the capacity to talk to everyone, and then I will not be able to explain it on the phone. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I hope I have answered basic questions about what is quantum computing, and you guys are ready to learn more about it. How to construct nice algorithms in this. Thank you.
So will you upload this summary right now or after the quiz?
You mean the Zoom video
Yes,
thing?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hopefully tomorrow morning. Okay. Thank you.
So,
Yes.
so one small thing, I had a doubt in this Mach-Zehnder interferometer.
Sure.
So you use the probability half for the first reflection. Can you please show that diagram again?
Sure. Yeah.
So you said that for a photon, that is for a photon to achieve, matlab you use 25% probability for a photon to be detected at D1 when it is following the top route,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that is because the half probability of going above and then one
Reflected.
probability of getting reflected, and then why would it be half probability matlab,
At the second beam splitter.
okay.
The
Yeah.
second, because it's the same thing, right? It's another
So,
beam splitter, right? So beam splitter,
so basically it can reflect both ways. You are saying this is like a two-sided mirror.
Mhm.
That beam splitter, is it like a two-sided mirror?
Yeah, basically it can.
Okay.
So see, whatever name you want to give it, but when I do the experiment, what I find is that if I keep this beam splitter and shoot my photon gun, half the time I detect a photon at detector to look at the top picture, right? Where there is just one beam splitter, and half the time I detected at detector one, right? So now your interpretation, definitely this is not a deterministic interpretation, right? It cannot be that it is always reflecting or always reflecting. So you make a probabilistic interpretation, which is that half the time it reflects, half the time it reflects. So now,
Sir, I want to interfere. The reflecting surface of the beam splitters in the top, it is on the upper side, and it is on the top wala beam what you call that beam splitter, the reflecting surface on the lower side. Okay? So yeah, the probability of reflecting is half no matter from which side the beam is coming.
That is correct. Yes, but yes, it doesn't depend on whether so quantum mechanically there is going to be a phase difference because of it. But classically, when you look at the behavior, half the times it will reflect, half the times it will reflect. Okay. Have I answered the questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other question?
Sir, I had a question. Sir, we multiplied the half from for the lower and then with the half for the higher. Sir, that means that we are assuming that these two are independent events. But if we prove somehow that these are not independent, then maybe we can prove that D1 will always get all the photons.
That's an interesting observation. So my answer would be that yeah. So this is going into more details, but people have looked at other interpretations, classical interpretations also, and they found out that the only way to explain it is using quantum mechanical principles.
Okay.
Yeah, but interesting point here. Yeah, though, but you can argue that probably like all photons are identical, and then you have two independent beam splitters. So why are they related or something? I don't know. But yeah, I don't have a convincing answer to that why they are independent. Any other question? Okay, in that case, thank you again. I will see you on Tuesday.